Adapted from archaic translation by W.H.D. Rouse. Jataka number 300. Vaka-Jātaka. The wolf who takes, etc. This story the master told at Jetavana monastery, about old friendship. The circumstances were the same in detail as in the Vinaya. This is an abstract of them. The Reverend Upasena, a 2-years man, visited the master along with a first-years man who lived in the same monastery. The master rebuked him, and he retired. Having acquired spiritual insight, and attained to sainthood, having got contentment and family virtues, having undertaken the 13 practices of a hermit, and taught him to his fellows, while the Lord Buddha was secluded for 3 months, he with his brethren, having accepted the blame first given for wrong speech and nonconformity, received in the second instance approval, in the words, "From now on, let any brothers visit me when they will, provided they follow the 13 practices of a hermit." Thus encouraged, he returned and told it to the brethren. After that, the brothers followed these practices before coming to visit the master. Then, when Ho had come out from his seclusion, they would throw away their old rags and put on clean garments. As the master with all the body of the brethren went round to inspect the rooms, he noticed these rags lying about, and asked what they were. When they told him, he said, "Brethren, the practice undertaken by these brothers is short-lived, like the wolf's holy day service." And he told them an old world tale. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta reigned king in Benares, the Bodhisattva came to life as Sakka, king of the gods. At that time a wolf lived on a rock by the Ganges bank. The winter floods came up and surrounded the rock. There he lay upon the rock, with no food and no way of getting it. The water rose, and the wolf thought, "No food here, and no way to get it. Here I lie, with nothing to do. I may as well keep a fasting day feast." Thus resolved to keep a fasting day. As he lay he sincerely resolved to keep the religious rules. Sakka in his meditations perceived the wolf's weak resolve. Thought he, "I'll plague that wolf." And taking the shape of a wild goat, he stood near, and let the wolf see him. "I'll keep fasting day another day," thought the wolf, as he spied him. Up he got, and leapt at the creature. But the goat jumped about so that the wolf could not catch him. When our wolf saw that he could not catch him, he came to a standstill, and went back, thinking to himself as he lay down again, "Well, my fasting day is not broken after all." Then Sakka, by his divine power, hovered above in the air. Said he, "What have such as you, all unstable, to do with keeping a fasting day? You didn't know that I was Sakka, and wanted a meal of goat's flesh." And thus tormenting and rebuking him, he returned to the world of the gods. The wolf, who takes live creatures for his food, and makes a meal upon their flesh and blood, once undertook a holy vow to pay, made up his mind to keep the fasting day. When Sakka learnt what he resolved to do, he made himself a goat to outward view. Then the blood bibber leaped to seize his prey, his vow forgot, his virtue thrown away. Even so some persons in this world of ours, that make resolves which are beyond their powers, swerve from their purpose, as the wolf did here as soon as he saw the goat appear. When the master had ended this discourse, he identified the birth as follows. At that time I myself was Sakka. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H. T. Francis and R. A. Neil. Jataka number 301. Cullakāliṅga-Jātaka. Open the gate, etc. This story was told by the master while living at Jetavana monastery, about the admission of 4 female ascetics to the religious life. Tradition says that Lichavas of the ruling family to the number of 7,707 had their dwelling at Vaishali city. And all of them were given to argument and debate. Now a certain Jain, skilled in maintaining 500 different teachings, arrived at Vaishali city and met with a kind reception there. A female Jain too of a similar character also came to Vaishali city, and the Lichavi chiefs got up a debate between them. And when they proved well matched as disputing persons, the Lichavas were struck with the notion that such a pair would be sure to have clever children. So they arranged a marriage between them, and as the issue of this union in due course 4 daughters and a son were born. The daughters were named Sakka, Lola, Avavadaka, and Patakara, and the boy was called Sakaka. These 5 children, when they reached years of discretion, learned 1,000 different teachings, 500 from the mother and 500 from the father. And the parents schooled their daughters after this manner. If any layman refutes your teaching, you are to become his wives. But if an elder monk refutes you, you must take holy order of disciples at his hands. After a time their parents died. And when they were dead, the Jain Sakaka lived on in the same place at Vaishali city, studying the tradition of the Lichavas. But his sisters took in their hands a branch of the rose apple tree, and in the course of their wanderings from city to city for purposes of debate, at last reached Shravasti city. There they planted the rose apple branch at the city gate, and said to some boys who were there, "If any man, be he layman or elder monk, is equal to maintaining a teaching against us, let him scatter with his foot this heap of dust and trample under foot this branch." And with these words they went into the city to collect alms. Now the venerable Sariputra, after sweeping up wherever it was necessary, and putting water into the empty pots and tending the sick, later on in the day went into Shravasti city for alms. And when he had seen and heard about the branch, he ordered the boys to throw it down and trample upon it. "Let those," said he, "by whom this tree branch has been planted, as soon as they have finished their meal, come and see me in the gable chamber over the gate of Jetavana monastery." So he went into the city, and when he had ended his meal, he took his stand in the chamber over the monastery gate. The female ascetics too, after going their rounds for alms, returned and found the branch had been trampled on. And when they asked who had done this, the boys told them it was Sariputra, and if they were anxious for a debate, they were to go to the chamber over the gate of the monastery. So they returned to the city, and followed by a great crowd went to the gate tower of the monastery, and spoke to the elder monk 1,000 different questions. The elder monk solved all their difficulties and then asked them if they knew any more. They replied, "No, my lord." "Then I," said he, "will ask you something." "Ask on, my lord," they said, "and if we know it, we will answer you." So the elder monk asked just one question to them, and when they had to give it up, the elder monk told them the answer. Then said they, "We are beaten, the victory rests with you. What will you do now?" He asked. "Our parents," they replied, "advised us thus. If you are refuted in debate by a layman, you are to become his wives, but if by an elder monk, you are to receive holy order of disciples at his hands. Therefore," said they, "admit us to the religious life." The elder monk readily agreed and initiated them in the house of the nun called Upalavana. And all of them shortly attained to sainthood. Then one day they started this topic in the Hall of Truth, how that Sariputra proved a refuge to the 4 female ascetics, and that through him they all attained to sainthood. When the master came and heard the nature of their discourse, he said, "Not now only, but in former times too, Sariputra proved a refuge to these women. On this occasion he dedicated him to the religious life, but formally he raised him to the dignity of queen wife. Then he told him an old world story. Once upon a time when Kalinga was reigning in the city of Dantapura in the Kalinga kingdom, Assaka was king of Potali in the Assaka country. Now Kalinga had a fine army and was himself as strong as an elephant, but could find no one to fight with him. So being eager for a fight, he said to his ministers, "I am longing to fight but can find no one to war with me." His ministers said, "Sire, there is one way open to you. You have 4 daughters of surpassing beauty. Ask them to adorn themselves with jewels, and then seated in a covered carriage let them be driven to every village, town and royal city with an armed escort. And if any king shall be desirous of taking them into his harem, we will get up a fight with him." The king followed their advice. But the kings of the various countries, wherever they came, were afraid to let them enter their cities, but sent them presents and assigned them quarters outside the city walls. Thus they passed through the length and breadth of India till they reached Potali in the Assaka country. But Assaka too closed his gates against them and merely sent him a present. Now this king had a wise and able minister named Nandisena, who was proficient in many ways. He thought to himself, "These princesses, men say, have moved across the length of India without finding any to fight for their possession. If this is the case, India is but an empty name. I myself will do battle with Kalinga." Then he went and asked the guards to open the city gate to them, and spoke the first stanza. "Open the gate to these girls. Through Nandisena's might, King Aruna's sage lion, our city is guarded properly." With these words he threw open the gate, and brought the girls into the presence of King Assaka, and said to him, "Fear not. If there is to be a fight, I will see to it. Make these fair princesses your chief queens." Then he installed them as queens by sprinkling them with holy water, and dismissed their attendants, asking them go and tell Kalinga that his daughters had been raised to the dignity of queen wife. So they went and told him, and Kalinga said, "I presume he does not know how powerful I am," and at once set out with a great army. Nandisena heard of his approach and sent a message to this effect: "Let Kalinga abide within his own marches, and not encroach upon ours, and the battle shall be fought on the frontiers of the 2 countries." On receiving this message, Kalinga halted within the limits of his own territory, and Assaka also kept to his. At this time the Bodhisattva was following the ascetic life and was living in a hermitage on a spot lying between the 2 kingdoms. Said Kalinga, "These monks are knowing fellows. Who can tell which of us will gain the victory, and which will be defeated? I will ask this ascetic." So he came to the Bodhisattva disguised, and sitting respectfully on one side, after the usual kindly greetings he said, "Your Reverence, Kalinga and Assaka have their threes drawn up each within his own territory, eager for a fight. Which of them will be victorious, and which will be defeated?" "Your Excellency," he replied, "the one will conquer, the other will be beaten. I can tell you no more. But Sakka, the King of Heaven, is coming here. I will ask him and let you know, if you come back again tomorrow." So when Sakka came to pay his respects to the Bodhisattva, he put this question to him, and Sakka replied, "Reverend Sir, Kalinga will conquer, Assaka will be defeated, and such omens will be seen beforehand." Next day Kalinga came and repeated his question, and the Bodhisattva gave Sakka's answer. And Kalinga, without inquiring what the omens would be, thought to himself, "They tell me I shall conquer," and went away quite satisfied. This report spread abroad, and when Assaka heard it, he summoned Nandisena and said, "Kalinga, they say, will be victorious and we shall be defeated. What is to be done? Sire, he replied, who knows this? Do not trouble yourself as to who shall gain the victory and who shall suffer defeat. With these words he comforted the king. Then he went and saluted the Bodhisattva, and sitting respectfully on one side he asked, who, reverend sir, will conquer, and who will be defeated? Kullakāliṅga, he replied, will win the day and Assaka will be beaten. And what, reverend sir, he asked, will be the omen for the one that conquers, and what for the one that is defeated? Your Excellency, he answered, the guardian deity of the conqueror will be a spotless white bull, and that of the other king a perfectly black bull, and the guardian gods of the two kings will themselves fight and be forcefully victorious or defeated. On hearing this, Nandasena rose up and went and took the king's allies. They were about 1,000 in number and all of them great warriors, and led them up a mountain close at hand and asked them, saying, would you sacrifice your lives for our king? Yes, sir, we would, they answered. Then throw yourselves from this precipice, he said. They tried to do so, when he stopped them, saying, no more of this. Show yourselves faithful friends of our king and make a gallant fight for him. They all vowed to do so. And when the battle was now imminent, Kullakāliṅga came to the conclusion in his own mind that he would be victorious, and his army too thought the victory will be ours. And so they put on their armor, and forming themselves into separate detachments, they advanced just as they thought proper. And when the moment came for making a great effort, they failed to do so. But both the kings, mounted on horseback, came near to one another with the intention of fighting. And the two guardian gods moved before them, that of Kullakāliṅga in the shape of a white bull, and that of the other king as a black bull. And as these came near to one another, they too made every demonstration of fighting. But these two bulls were visible to the two kings only, and to no one else. And Nandasena asked Assaka, saying, Your Highness, are the guardian gods visible to you? Yes, he answered, they are. In what guise? He asked. The guardian god of Kullakāliṅga appears in the shape of a white bull, while ours is in the form of a black bull and looks distressed. Fear not, sire, we shall conquer and Kullakāliṅga will be defeated. Only dismount from your well-trained Sind horse. And grasping this spear, with your left hand give him a blow on the flank. And then with this body of 1,000 men advance quickly and with a stroke of your weapon fell to the ground this god of Kullakāliṅga. While we with 1,000 spears will hit him and so shall Kullakāliṅga's guardian deity perish, and then shall Kullakāliṅga be defeated and we shall be victorious. Good, said the king, and at a given signal from Nandasena, he hit with his spear and his courtiers too hit with their 1,000 spears. And the guardian god of Kullakāliṅga died then and there. Meanwhile Kullakāliṅga was defeated and fled. And at the sight all those 1,000 counselors raised a loud cry, saying, Kullakāliṅga is fled. Then Kullakāliṅga with the fear of death upon him, as he fled, rebuked that ascetic and uttered the second stanza. Kullakāliṅga's bold shall victory claim, defeat crowns Asakas with shame. Thus did your reverence prophesy, and honest folk should never lie. Thus did Kullakāliṅga, as he fled, abuse that ascetic. And in his flight to his own city he dared not so much as to once look back. And a few days afterwards Sakka came to visit the hermit. And the hermit conversing with him uttered the third stanza. The gods from lying words are free, truth should their highest treasure be. In this, great Sakka, you did lie. Tell me, I ask, the reason why. On hearing this, Sakka spoke the fourth stanza. Have you, O Brahmin, never been told gods envy not the hero bold? The fixed resolve that may not yield, courageous skill in the field, high courage and adventurous might for Assaka have won the fight. And on the flight of Kalinga, King Assaka returned with his spoils to his own city. And Nandasena sent a message to Kalinga, that he was to forward a portion for the dowry of these 4 royal maidens. Otherwise, he added, I shall know how to deal with him. And Kalinga, on hearing this message, was so alarmed that he sent a fitting portion for them. And from that day forward the 2 kings lived amicably together. His discourse ended, the master identified the birth. In those days these young female ascetics were the daughters of King Kalinga, Saraputra was Nandasena, and I myself was the hermit.